Hello, Georgetown fans, and welcome into episode 6 of the Gtown Breakdown. And in this episode, I'm going to be looking back at last week's game against Rouse. Georgetown was at home, and they find a way to win is really the name of that game. They started off really strong, got a big lead, and then just kind of survived in that second half to pull out with a district win to remain undefeated in district so far this season. A lot of stuff to get into. Very exciting game. Should be an exciting episode. So thank you for joining me. And without further ado, let's get started. So Georgetown 35, Rouse 33, a highly contested game. Georgetown started off really strong and then slowed down in that second half. But and as always, I'm going to do a quick game recap right here just to preface any information that I'm going to talk about a little bit later with a quick recap in case anybody forgot, anybody needs a refresher, or just wants to see some highlights. As always, this starts with the coin toss. Georgetown won the coin toss and received the football, and we talk about this pretty much every week. Georgetown loves receiving the ball because of how much confidence they have in their offense to take the first possession and go score and immediately put the other team in a deficit. It is an entirely different ball game when you're trying to play catch up versus trying to play in a tie or even when you have the lead. And Georgetown has always been a team the past 3-4 years now who loves to get that ball and try to put the other team in an immediate deficit, and they did once again this past game. Their first drive went 9 plays, 81 yards. Jet Walker had an 8-yard touchdown run. And on that drive, Caleb McDougall was 6 of 7 for 75 yards throwing the football, which was a little bit of a shock to me coming in because I expected a lot more run, which we got later in the game. But this first drive was pretty pass heavy, and it was an interesting philosophy coming out in that first drive, maybe a tendency breaker a bit. They expected Rouse to maybe expect defensively that Georgetown was going to run the ball, and they ended up throwing a lot of passes. And ultimately, Walker gets into the end zone, 8-yard touchdown. They do not get the 2-point conversion here, though. So the first score of the game makes it 6-0.
First and goal from the 8. McDougall, snap back. He'll hand it to Jet Walker. Goes left. Follows a blocker from T-Row. Cuts outside. A stiff arm. Touchdown, Georgetown. And now a unique formation here for the Eagles. McDougall in the backfield on this 2-point opportunity. Snap back to McDougall. Being blitzed, throws it wide open, but he overthrows it to his receiver.
Rouse took the ensuing kickoff and actually ran it back all the way to Georgetown's 41-yard line. So an immediate special team spark for them, and they don't waste any time with a good field position. They go 41 yards in 4 plays. It was a 1-yard touchdown run for them. They end up going for the PAT, getting it. So they actually take the lead 7-6, and both teams score a touchdown on their first drive.
Teed up by Galaviz at kickoff. Far side, fielded at the 15 by the Raiders. Up past the 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. Splits defenders and off to the races. But Galaviz slows him down, and the tackle made into Georgetown territory. Morgan will get up under center again. 2 running backs in I formation in the backfield. Morgan the snap, hands it to the up man, and they will push forward. And it'll be into the end zone. Touchdown, Raiders.
Georgetown keeps it rolling, though. Their second drive of the ball game, they actually have a beautiful throw from Caleb McDougall on the far sideline at Copeland Madre for 47 yards to set up a Jet Walker 1-yard touchdown run. They get the 2-point conversion here, so that makes up for the missed one earlier. Now 14-7 after 3 drives, 2 for Georgetown, 1 for Rouse.
McDougall has 3 receivers, wide right, 1 wide left. Snap back, McDougall looking left. He's got to take a one-on-one shot down the left sideline. The pass caught! And he gets deep his feet. The ball comes out. They're going to rule him down at the 1-yard line. And I believe it's Copeland Madre. What a job. The Eagles first and goal from the 1-yard line. 2 receivers right, none left. Now T-Row moves into the left end of the line. Snap back to McDougall. Hand it to Jet Walker up the middle. And he'll plow forward into the end zone. Touchdown, Georgetown. Direct snap back to Walker. Straight forward. The pile pushes forward, and Jet Walker is into the end zone. The 2-point conversion is good.
Next drive, Georgetown's defense forces 2 PBUs, pass breakups, and they actually get a 3-and-out on this very effective Rouse offense, and they get the ball back to your Georgetown Eagle offense, and they end up going 3 for 3. It was a 12-play, 75-yard drive where McDougall threw to Xavier Warren, an 8-yard touchdown to make it 21-7.
2 receivers right, 2 left for Georgetown as we start quarter number 2. Headed towards the north end of the field now. McDougall on the far side hash mark. Westfall in motion. Snap back to McDougall. Looks left. Hesitates. Throws. Warren. Touchdown, Georgetown!
Next drive, Rouse actually goes backwards. They were sacked by Adrian Provo and Tennyson Dean to force two back-to-back 3-and-outs, which was a major shock to me personally, just coming into this game, knowing how good Rouse's offense was. That defense, after that first drive where they only needed to go 41 yards, they actually went back-to-back 3-and-outs to get the ball right back to the offense. And then sensing that Rouse was on their back foot, Georgetown dialed up a trick play. It was a beautiful play call. It double passed from McDougal to Westfall. Then Westfall hit Madry down the sideline, a 44-yard touchdown the very next play after the punt. And it ended up being 28-7, just like that in this football game. And Georgetown looked very, very efficient early.
Man in motion to the right, 3 receivers left. Reyes fakes the handoff, pressured. He's going to be sacked in the backfield. Who's in on it?
98.
Oh, Mr. Provo.
8. Dean.
Number 98, Provo, and number 8, Tennyson Dean, the dog. Clap of the hand, snap back. McDougal fakes a handoff, pitches it to Westfall. It's a double pass. Westfall throws it down the field. Madry wide open, 20, 15, 10, 5. Touchdown, Georgetown.
Rouse, all the momentum against them at this point, they actually find a way to get a effective drive together on offense. They go 12 plays, 73 yards. It was a 13-yard touchdown run by Auburn Davis. The PAT, though, was blocked, and that actually blocked by Adrian Provo, and that actually left the score 28-13 even after that touchdown run.
2 receivers right, 2 running backs on either side of Morgan. Snap back, handed off, left side wide open. Touchdown, Rouse.
Big time response for Rouse. They needed that drive desperately with how well Georgetown's offense has played. But now the question goes right back to the defense. Can they keep Georgetown out of the end zone?
Zoka blocked. The Raiders will fall on it, but the extra point is no good. And
Georgetown on the next drive, after Rouse ends up scoring, they march all the way down to the 1-yard line, but then disaster strikes. On the 1-yard line, they call a pass play. They actually get sacked, the first sack of the season, put them back to the 7-yard line. They then throw an incompletion and are then picked off in the end zone, resulting that drive ultimately then means no points for Georgetown on what was a 1st and goal at the 1. They end up throwing a pick on 3rd and goal from the 7.
1st and goal, snap back, McDougal fakes the handoff, pressure coming, and for the first time in the season, Caleb McDougal is sacked back to the 9-yard line. 2 receivers left, 1 right, Walker to the left of McDougal in the backfield, far side hash mark. Now Westfall in motion. Fake the handoff, roll left, looking left, McDougal, he's running forward, going to throw, reverse, and it's intercepted in the end zone.
Credit the defense on that next drive. They sacked Rouse's quarterback twice. It was Jesse Espinoza, and actually Jet Walker got in there for a sack as well. They forces a punt just before halftime.
Reyes in the backfield to the left of Morgan on 1st and 10. Now a man in motion to the left side. Morgan looks to pass, has time, pressured, sacked! Oh, baby, Georgetown gets the sack, and that is number 36, Jesse Espinoza. Reyes to his left side in the backfield. Snap back, Morgan looking downfield, pressured, sacked all the way back to the 11.
And then with about 20 seconds left at Rouse's 43-yard line, Georgetown has no timeouts, and they're going to try to push the ball down for a field goal. They actually get, after 2 completions to Westfall, they get inside Rouse's 20-yard line, and they have 5 seconds. The pass was completed inbounds, and then another seemingly mental error occurs where the offense lines up to attempt to spike the ball because the clock would stop on that first down completion inbounds to reset the chains. So they're trying to rush ahead to spike the ball to get the field goal unit on. But the field goal unit partially comes onto the field anyway as the offense is trying to come up to spike it. It's a mess of communication. Georgetown ends up getting penalized for too many men on the field. And the ensuing 10-second runoff actually ended the half because Georgetown did not have a timeout to negate that runoff. So 2 drives there that were promising that could have resulted in some more points for Georgetown. They end up getting nothing going into halftime with a 28-13 lead.
The Eagles quickly back on the line. McDougal, a clap of the hand, snap back. He's looking left, looking right, throw it in the middle of the field. Westfall, he's going to slide down at about the 15-yard line. The Eagles will have to get up to the line, and once the changer sets, snap it and spike it.
A lot of confusion.
They tried to get the field goal unit on, it looked like, and that's going to be too many players, which is going to run the clock to halftime. 10-second runoff, and Georgetown doesn't have a timeout.
In the third quarter, Rouse continued their rally. They got the football first, and they went 11 plays, 70 yards, got a touchdown by London Morgan, a 7-yard keeper. 28-20 was the score after that.
He is offset to the right of Morgan. Near side hash mark. 3 receivers right, 1 left. Fake the handoff. Looking to throw. Pressured. And Morgan's going to escape the pressure. There's a hold in the end zone. No flag. Touchdown, Rouse.
Georgetown keeping pace, though, even after the response from Rouse out of halftime. Georgetown goes 9 plays, 57 yards, including a 4th down and 2 conversion. And Jet Walker runs a touchdown in from 9 yards out. They go make the score 35-20.
Walker to the right. Snap back. Hand it to Walker. Right side. Breaks a tackle. Touchdown, Georgetown.
At this point, though, Rouse was clicking on offense. They get the ball, they score once again. And the second half, the theme offensively for Rouse was London Morgan creating and extending plays after the pocket breaks down from the pressure. We saw that a lot on this drive in particular and throughout that second half. But this was another touchdown. He actually had a free play and offsides jump on 3rd and 5. He just heaved it up into the end zone. They caught a 31-yard touchdown. And Provo blocks this PAT again. So this score is actually 35-26. And that block was huge because that actually kept it a 9-point lead or a 2-possession lead for the Eagles. And this was heading into the late third quarter, early fourth quarter time. So this was a pretty big deal coming into the final stretch of this football game for Georgetown to maintain that 2-possession lead as we were heading into the fourth quarter.
Snap back to Morgan. Nope. And the Eagles jump off sides. Free play here. Morgan scrambles right. He's got to throw on the run. Throws it up towards the end zone. And it's hauled in. Touchdown, Raiders. Zoka lines up. Snap is back. The hold is down. The extra point is up. And the extra point is blocked again by the Eagles. Georgetown will fall on it.
Georgetown then got the ball back. Rouse is firing on all cylinders on offense. They've got the pressure. They need to respond, and they get all the way to Rouse's 39-yard line. But on 4th and 10, they're forced to punt the ball away, and it ends up going into the end zone for a touchback, the first punt of the ball game. And just like that, Rouse now has the football early fourth quarter at this point, and now down 2 possessions, but their offense has scored every time they've touched it in the second half, and things were starting to look a little dicey for the Eagles. And this final drive for Rouse was really what made the game, in my eyes. Rouse's offense is clicking. Georgetown defense needs a stop, and Rouse ends up scoring. They go 80 yards. They need to get back into the end zone, but Georgetown's defense made them earn it. It was a 16-play drive that took 6 minutes, 17 off the clock, and by the time they scored the touchdown to make it 35-33, they had actually only had 3 minutes, 45 seconds left to go in the game. And at that point, like we mentioned on the broadcast, if Georgetown could just pick up a couple first downs, they could seal the deal with their offense on the field, which ultimately is what happened.
Morgan moves men to the right side. No one to the left. Snap back. Fake the handoff. Throw into the end zone. Touchdown, Schneider.
Like I just mentioned, the final drive of the ball game was Georgetown's. And they took this kickoff, 3 minutes, 45 seconds left to go in this ball game. And they knew that they had a chance to milk the rest of this clock if they can pick up enough first downs. And who else would you go to other than Jet Walker? They called 8 runs. All 8 were carries by Walker. He picks up 46 yards and 3 first downs to seal the game. They win it with their offense on the field, a couple kneel downs. And Georgetown ends up picking up the district win 35-33 in a back-and-forth affair. Georgetown came out strong and then just kind of had to hold it all together at the very end to keep Rouse at bay and ended up winning the game at home.
Send Warren in motion. Snap back. Hand it. Walker right side. Finds a hole. Runs over 2 defenders. Enough for a borrow from Morrow first down up to the 37-yard line. Get it 2 from their own 45-yard line. Rouse with 2 timeouts remaining in the 2-minute timeout. McDougal takes his time, sends T-Row in motion to the left. Snap back to McDougal. Hand it to Walker. Follow Guyton up the middle. Bounce it outside. Fall forward. First down, Georgetown. 3rd and 4 from the 34. Snap back to McDougal. Hand it to Walker. Up the middle. He spins out of a tackle. First down! Georgetown's going to run the clock out and win it by 2. 35-33.
Some quick drive summary notes. Georgetown started 4 for 4 scoring touchdowns. After that, they only scored once on the next 5 and were outscored 26-7, including the end of the second quarter. So plenty of good, plenty of things to work on as well, which we'll touch on in the improvements and takeaways later in the video. But a big time win is the first and foremost thing, the most important thing coming out of last Friday night, to remain undefeated in district and keeping pace with, who guessed it, Eastview. Statistically, on offense, McDougal was 19 of 26 for 250 yards, a touchdown, and interception. He had a long of 47, the beautiful throw to Madre on the far sideline. And then Westfall actually had the one attempt where he had the trick play touchdown for 44 yards, also to Madre on the other sideline. Running the ball, Jet Walker had 30 carries. The only other running back had 3 for Zach Guyton. Walker also had 192 yards and 3 touchdowns. All of those were season highs for him, long of 22 for Jet Walker. And since returning from the first 2 drives of the first ball game and missing that Belton week, he's averaging 19 carries, 137 yards, and about 2.3 touchdowns, so 2 touchdowns a game. He also has 4 straight games of over 100 yards and over 2 touchdowns, 2 or more touchdowns. So he's been as advertised as we expected coming into this season, picking up right where he left off from last year's MVP campaign in district. He has been the focal point of this offense these last couple weeks, and we really saw him blossom into the bell cow workhorse that he was last year, this past week against Rouse. Receiving the ball, Copeland Madre led the team, 4 catches, 105 and a score. Braylon Westfall had 6 catches for 62 yards. Xavier Warren had 6 catches, 45 yards and a score. Braden Bratton had 2 receptions for 49 yards as well. And Copeland Madre is actually the 4th different player to lead the team in receiving yards this season. It has been Braylon Westfall led it. Xavier Warren's led it a couple times. Braylon Bratton led it in his breakout game. And now Copeland Madre has led the team in yards. So there's a bunch of different guys who can all beat you. And I'll touch on that a little bit later in the takeaways. But this receiving core I've been so impressed with this season. Everybody that we wanted to step up has stepped up and then exceeded that. And even just completely taken over their own roles and also exceeded their roles, and kind of whenever their numbers been called, they've all performed admirably. Some big picture stuff. Georgetown ran 61 plays for 495 yards. It's averaging 8.1 a play. They ran the ball 34 times for 201, averaging 5.9 a carry. And then they threw it 27 times for 294, a 10.9 an attempt. 4th and 8 on 3rd down. 2 for 2 on 4th down. They had the 1 sack, their only sack of the season so far. They also had 1 punt and 1 turnover. And finally, 4 penalties for 30 yards. Penalties weren't really an issue either way. Ross only had 1 penalty the whole game. We had obviously the 4 for 30, but they didn't haunt any drive. They didn't kill any drive. So not something to touch on a whole bunch, but there was a couple of inefficiencies for this offense, particularly in that second half. And really right after the debacle in the end zone, that interception after getting sacked on 1st and goal from the 1, after that moment, the offense really never quite found their rhythm again. And luckily they had such a big lead at that point, they were able to hold on to it and just kind of survive. But something to note is, like, adversity wise, this offense has been able to kind of have their way with most of their opponents. And last week when Rouse started challenging them, they couldn't quite match that level of intensity from Rouse's defense. And that was a defense that had not played very well throughout the season. So something to monitor going forward. How does Georgetown continue to switch things up when their original game plan isn't working? What adjustments do they make? Who do they go to? Who do they ask? In this past game, it was Jet Walker. And I expect that to be usually the answer going forward, just to give it to your best player. But that is something to monitor, is how efficiently and how effectively Georgetown can make adjustments when their game plan kind of starts slowing down. Defensively, some tackle leaders. As always, my tackle numbers are going to be a little bit off. Sometimes it's a little difficult to see who makes the first initial contact. Additionally, I don't always give credit to everybody who makes a tackle in like a pileup. I'll usually try to give the first or second guy there. And so tackle numbers are going to be a little bit up and down, in particular in regards to what Georgetown's official numbers are. But from what I had Bollinger having 7 tackles, Cole Mitchell 6 tackles, 2 TFLs. AJ Stevenson had 5 tackles, a TFL. Easton Smith had 5 tackles. In the game, we had 6 TFLs, 3 sacks, and 5 pass breakups. So this defense was flying around, and they, for the most part, rose up to the challenge against a high-flying Rouse offense. And even in that second half, where Rouse scored every time they touched the football, they didn't make it terribly easy. There were a lot of times that Rouse was having to create and extend plays outside of the pocket to find the plays down the field, in particular when Ludd and Morgan's scrambling out. And what comes to mind for me is that 31-yard touchdown on the offsides call. But outside of that, like in the traditional play structure, they really didn't find much success with their usual sets. They had to kind of wait to the second half and wait for those plays to break down to start finding those offensive chunk plays that they've kind of lived on throughout this season. Big picture wise for the defense, they allowed 60 plays for 326. That's a 5.4 yard per play average. That is, they allowed 32 carries for 126, which is 3.9 yards a carry. And then there was 28 pass attempts for 200 yards, which was 7.1 yard a throw. Now, the big thing takeaway for me for defensively was that Rouse was 8 of 12 on third down and 1 for 1 on fourth. And in particular, they were 5 for 6 on third down in the second half. And the only time they didn't get it, they went for it on fourth down and got it as well. So coming into this game, Georgetown was highly effective on third down defensively. They only allowed 33% of third downs to be converted, and this was obviously 66%. So double that percentage was what Rouse was able to do against this defense. And obviously, Rouse is a very good offense. So these numbers were going to be challenged quite a bit by how effective and how dynamic Rouse was, in particular throwing the football. But that is something to continue to monitor. That third down, which is a down that Georgetown's really owned, that was the difference in what allowed Rouse to continue moving the ball down the field. They were able to convert those effectively and efficiently in the second half, which is why they scored every time they touched the ball. Georgetown really could not get them off the field on third down. They could not get them behind the chains enough to where third down were more difficult. A lot of the times, Rouse continued to find positive yardage on first and second to get themselves in 3rd and 2, rather than 2 incompletions, making it a 3rd and 10. And then that's a whole different ball game because the defense can play to cover 10 yards rather than play to cover 2 yards in 3rd and 2. Just some other quick notes. The pass rush was very effective. They were, hounding London Morgan all day long, but the contain fell apart in the second half. And that was really seen in the pass yardage. In the first half, London Morgan threw for 25 yards. In the second, it was 175. And that was because he was able to extend the plays. He couldn't do that in the first half. The contain was there. Every time he tried to spin out and roll away, he ended up getting sacked by the other guy from the other side, or he had to throw it away, or the play just didn't work. In that second half, though, he was able to elude the rush and get to the outside of the pass rush where he can extend and see the ball, everything down the field. And at that point, you're asking your cover guys to plaster their receivers for 7 seconds, which is a tough task regardless of how good your secondary is, and especially with how good we know Rouse's receivers are. And so that was really what made that difference in the second half. The contain was not there and the pass rush was. And honestly, that is a recipe for those type of things to happen. Because when you know you can pass rush effectively, but you also know that you're not containing well, the quarterback notches it in their mind that if they're coming after me from the inside, I can break this either way, left or right, with ease, because I know that they're not going to be disciplined enough to keep me in the pocket. And that's exactly what happened in the second half. And then finally, the secondary actually held Rouse under their season averages for their 3 primary playmakers throwing the ball. Morgan came in averaging 300 yards a game. He finished with 200. Auburn Davis and Alfredo Lopez both averaged over 100 yards a game receiving, or around that. I believe Lopez was about 96 yards a game. Auburn Davis finished the game with 79 yards and Alfredo Lopez only 21. So it really wasn't a super dynamic day for that Rouse Raider offense, especially in regards to what they expected and what they had done in the previous weeks. So the secondary did not, in the second half, struggled, but I think it was more so on the containment than the actual secondary coverage themselves. I think they came in with a great game plan in the back end, and they were really able to take away the big shot plays from that Rouse offense, who had thrived on them up to coming into this week. That's how they scored so often, because they were able to push the ball down the field with their explosive playmakers and with their superstar quarterback, and they really weren't able to do that super effectively against the Eagles. As far as my MVPs go, I think these guys have more than earned it. Jet Walker, the second week in a row, is my offensive MVP. And then on defense, Adrian Provo, the guy who actually blocked both of those PATs in a game that we won by 2, is my defensive MVP. I think these two guys, without them, Rouse may easily have come into this football game and won it last week. So big shout out to those two guys. They are my offensive and defensive MVPs respectively. Walker, he had 30 carries, 192, and 3 touchdowns. He was only spelled on 3 plays by Zach Guyton. He got, obviously, the vast majority of the work carrying the football, and he also had a sack in this ball game too. And it's not an offensive number, but just to show his level of impact, he is everywhere for this football team. And my biggest thing for him was that in the clutch, he delivered. When they needed him the most, when they needed the first downs to seal the ball game, he got the ball 8 straight times and drove out 46 yards and 3 first downs to seal the win. That to me was the most impressive thing. Also got to give a big shout out to that offensive line for pushing people backwards and giving him the space to operate, because as soon as he gets even the slightest lane, he's putting the shoulder down, he's driving forward, and that first contact is probably not going to bring him down. He's going to get 2 or 3 or 4 more yards after that. And so he is just, to me, he really embodies what it is to be a Georgetown Eagle. He has no quit. He has the toughness. He's got the physicality. And just when the defense knew the run was coming, him and that offensive line got together and they just drove him backwards to win the game for the Eagles. And so that is really why he is my MVP. He's the best player on this football team for a reason. And Jet Walker, big shout out to him. What a day. And then defensively, Adrian Provo, a guy that really came into this week, hadn't really announced himself yet, hadn't had any amount of big plays, but he showed up against Rouse. He had 3 tackles, he had half a sack, he split it with Tennyson Dean, and then he also, and as I mentioned, he blocked both the PATs in a game that we won by 2. If he had not done that, then Rouse could have easily tied that ball game up in that second half, and who knows what's going on from there. So he really showed out, not just in the PAT department, but like I mentioned, he also had a sack in the pass rush. He was winning against that offensive line for Rouse. He had the 3 tackles, and from the interior defensive line position, he was just a high impact guy coming in, and once again, not really having announced himself so far this season. He was kind of underneath in the depth chart, but he came out with a big time performance, special teams with those blocked kicks, and then defensively also had that sack. He's really what won the game defensively because of those blocked PATs. So he is my defensive MVP for the Georgetown Eagles. As far as takeaways go, I've got 3. My number 1 is that Georgetown has weapons galore behind Xavier Warren. And I've mentioned this a couple times this season, but coming in, the question I had was who's going to step up in this wide receiver room? And really everybody has. It's not just Braylon Russell. It's not just Braden Bratton, but now Copeland Madre really emerged onto the scene. And he's been a guy who's been in this program a long time, who had really kind of been the underrated guy under the radar. And he popped for 100 plus and a touchdown. 6 different players had receptions this past week, and 2 different guys had more than 40 yards in a reception, Copeland Madre and Braden Bratton. And whenever this offense continues to get more and more pieces involved who all can contribute in different ways, it's just putting so much pressure on the defense to contain and guard so many different aspects this offense could beat you with. It's just an offensive coordinator's fantasy with what's going on with how effective this offense has been and how many weapons are emerging for Caleb McDougall to throw to, and weapons that are emerging for them to scheme open, scheme up, get plays to, just give them the ball in space. We see that a lot as well. This offense has really taken the next step these past couple of weeks. Aside from some hiccups in that second half against Rouse this past week, they've really been operating at a very high level. Secondly, Jet seems to have full confidence in his health, and obviously 30 carries, the most by far this season. And I actually suggested in some other videos that there would be maybe a committee approach where he'd get half the snaps, and then the other half of the snaps would be split between Weston Stewart and Zach Guyton, and they threw that out the window in this game. It was all Jet Walker pretty much all day long, and he paid him off. Again, he had the most amount of yards he's had in a game. He had 3 touchdowns most of this season. He's really shown up in a big way ever since he came back from the injury after that Belton loss. He's really become the workhorse. And look to going forward, it's still unclear how exactly they want to play this, the coaching staff for the Eagles, how effectively they want to give him the ball, because 30 carries a game would add up in the course of the season. And so I think it's going to still be dependent a little bit on the flow of the game, their opponent, how the other running backs are playing. I don't fully expect him to continue to dominate the backfield like he did against Rouse, but it is obvious that in the clutch, when they think it's a tight ball game, Jet Walker's their guy, and they don't want to sub him out. And even regardless of how effective the other running backs have played, I do get it from the perspective of this is still Jet Walker. He is still the guy who averaged a first down when he carried the ball last season. He's still the last season's district MVP. So I get it from that standpoint. Just something to continue to monitor as this continues to develop throughout the course of the season. How many carries are they giving Walker? How many carries are they giving the other guys? And how effective are these 3 running backs going to continue to be moving forward? And then thirdly, I think the front 4 and the front 7 has really won the matchup against every O-line they've faced this season. They have been able to generate massive amounts of pressure against every team that they've played, and that has really allowed this defense to round into form as the season has continued. There's really nothing that takes a defense to the next level like pressure does, because it allows the defense not to have to guard as long in the back end because the pressure is getting home. It also allows them to scheme things a little bit differently, especially if they can get pressure with the first four like they have so far this season. They've not had to send a ridiculous amount of blitzes to get people home. They can drop back 7, send the front 4, and they can still affect the quarterback. So that has been pretty much a constant every week this season. You can drop the guys into coverage to help out the back end. Now, additionally, the guys backing into coverage don't have to cover that long if the other guys are getting home. So that's been really a big takeaway that I've had so far this season. Tennyson Dean and Cole Mitchell, two names that really stand out to me. Tennyson's the leading sack guy on this football team. Cole Mitchell's really been that run stuffer on the edge, but he's also very dynamic. He can get back there and affect the QB. And really everybody in this front seven, the linebacker and the defensive line, have really come up and stepped up in a big way coming into this season where there was a lot of question marks for this defense. I think a bunch of them have been answered at this point in the year. And then some two improvements that I have for the team. Like I just mentioned, the pressure is really, really good, but the containment has not been at that level as well. And I touched on that a little bit earlier too. But in this game, Morgan didn't run as much as the other quarterbacks we've seen did. Instead, he kept his eyes down the field and created when the plays broke down. And that's really what sparked Rouse's offense then second half. He was able to extend plays, bounce to the outside, and create and find guys open down the field to keep drives moving. And really, you'd love to see the defensive line be able to rush in the sense that they are wrapping him in and they're clawing around him. They're almost like drawing this big sphere around where he's in the pocket, and they don't let him burst the bubble by bouncing either way. They just kind of come up and collapse inwards and don't give him anywhere to go. And obviously that is the ideal scenario. You're not really going to see the ideal scenario every week to week, every play to play. That's going to happen, especially with these mobile guys who are effective, they're elusive, they're highly athletic. They're going to make plays when they have the opportunity to. Georgetown's just got to do a better job of limiting the opportunities, because this has been a recurring theme most of the season, is that the mobile quarterbacks, when they've been able to escape the pressure, they've beat them. Either it's from their legs or from their arm, they've been able to find success against this defense. That's really the only success that's been found consistently against these guys. Belton was the 1 week, almost so long ago at this point, that they were able to just beat him from the pocket throwing the ball. No one else has really been able to do that. No one else has replicated that. Copper Cove ran the ball well in that first half and then really didn't do anything on that second half. There hasn't been a consistent mode to beat this team outside of the scrambling quarterback breaking things open whenever the play breaks down around him. So that's something that continues to be an issue that's getting at this defense. And as always, this is not an easy fix. Athletic quarterbacks are the hardest position to guard against because they do so much so well. But that is something that Georgetown's got to find a way to get better at, in particular, looking ahead to next week against Eastview. And then secondly, another big one that you might have, if you saw the game, then you definitely have it on your mind. And if you just watched the game recap, then you might have noticed it as well. But situational awareness really cost the Eagles, and in particular, at the end of the first half. I have 3 plays in particular that stood out to me. Firstly was the 1st and goal from the 1-yard line. The fact that, and it was a little confusing to me as well, I thought that it might have been an RPO call that none of the receivers got, because when McDougal pulled the ball to throw, no one was looking backwards. They were both blocking guys on the edge. So it seemed like the receivers thought it was run and McDougal thought it was RPO. So he had the potential to pull it and throw it. And obviously in an RPO, you don't have that much time to get rid of the football, especially in the goal line when everyone's so condensed. So when he pulled it and no one was looking back, it was bound to happen. The sack and push them back to the 7-yard line. It's just, again, we're not inside that locker room. We're not inside the headset, so we don't really know what was called there. From my eyes, it looked as if there was a miscommunication. McDougal thought RPO. Everyone else thought run. And so that miscommunication led to that sack, and they don't end up scoring on 1st and goal from the 1. But not only do they not score then, they also throw the interception on 3rd and goal from the 7. And on the broadcast, I offered what I thought McDougal saw. And again, I do not know if that is what he saw. But to me, from McDougal's point of view, potentially he saw the defensive player's back was turned to the quarterback. And traditionally, if you see the defender's back, you can make a play around his body because he's not looking at the ball. And so you can fit it a tight window throw. If you're accurate and if you have enough confidence in your guy to make that catch, you can throw that. The problem is that's really only applicable if the receiver is still running, because then the defender's having to sprint to keep up with him. And at that point, the receiver's in the back of the end zone. He's not really moving anywhere. So when the defender's back was turned momentarily, once he got onto this receiver, he was able to spin backwards and check out what was going on. And what do you know? The ball fell right to him. So there is still a miscommunication there, just kind of a lapse in judgment. That's got to be a pass you throw away to keep that possession alive, to at least get a field goal there. Instead, McDougal tries to force it in there, and whether or not that is what he saw, we'll never really know. But ultimately, that's got to be a play you just throw away. You live to fight another down, and you take the 3. And it would be a disappointing result, but it's much better to have that field goal than to come away with nothing. Finally, the debacle right at halftime, whenever they're able to get the first down, they have the offense driving in front to spike the football, and then the field goal unit kind of comes on as well, and no one really knows what's going on. They snap it, they get the penalty, and they go into halftime with no points after the 10-second runoff. That's something that is not only just on the coaching staff just to communicate, but also just situational awareness stuff. If I'm special teams, like, there's really no chance that you're going to be able to rush an entirely different unit onto the football field, snap the ball, and get the kick off in the 5 seconds. And regardless of how long you might have, maybe 3 seconds in the time it takes to reset the chains and they start the clock, that is a tough ask to get an entirely different unit on the field, get the offense off the field in 8 seconds, and then snap the ball and kick it with your kicker feeling comfortable, like you said, I'm ready to go. That is just really, really fast. And so to me, even if you end up not spiking the ball in time and you run out of clock, I'd much rather go out with that being the play than go out trying to rush everybody on and off, and maybe you get the snap off of the field goal, maybe you don't. Because at least with the spike, you have the opportunity, if you're able to execute it well and effectively and fast enough, to then get the field goal without the rush, because the clock would stop. Instead, it didn't really look like anybody knew what exactly they wanted. Offense went up to spike it. Field goal unit kind of came on and was hesitant. Too many men on the field, and then they go to halftime with nothing. That was obviously that is a fluke scenario. I do not expect that to be a recurring thing, because it hasn't been an issue at any other point this year. But there were a couple of moments in this game, and in particular that late second quarter, that really just situational awareness seemed to kind of lapse from the Eagles. And that is something that almost came back to get them in this ball game, because they were not able to score points on those final 2 drives. And it definitely can still continue to get them against the rest of the very good teams they will continue to play this season. So it's got to be a one-game thing for them. They cannot continue to leave points on the board like that against high-level competition, in particular who they're going to face this next week, Eastview, or how well they're playing. They've got to be able to score points when they're in the red zone. They've got to be able to operate at the highest level possible if they want to come out with a big-time W. And speaking of Eastview, it is Eastview week, and this is my favorite week of the season. It's the biggest rival for Georgetown, and this is honestly the rivalry game that's had the most implications that I remember ever watching. These guys, Eastview is undefeated in district, the only other undefeated team at this point. They're fresh off a highly emotional game, a last-second game winner against Cedar Park at Cedar Park, the first time they've ever beaten them, and they actually knocked Cedar Park out of their own undefeated record in district to drop them to 2-1. Now, the only 3-0 teams left in district heading off, and they just so happen to be their own biggest rivals. It should be a massive, massive game. Everything on the line here. Who the winner takes sole possession of number 1 in district. And there's a lot of stuff to get into, a lot of stuff to talk about with this football game, but a lot of it is just gonna be stuff that we see in game time. With rivalries like this, you never really know what to expect. Even when Eastview was struggling a little bit more than they are this season, you still never really knew what to anticipate, because Eastview can play with any type of edge, especially in these rivalry games where you can almost get the ceiling to your team and break it and push it up just a little bit more to get an extra juice out of your guys. That is something I still anticipate happening in this game. And this is a team that is absolutely capable of beating Georgetown, potentially, maybe unlike some years in the past where even if Eastview can get a good drive or good quarter, Georgetown's talent would kind of coast them at the end and they'd pull away. This is an entirely different ballgame now. Eastview is a legit contender in this district, and Georgetown's going to have their hands full. And the reason I say that in particular is because Eastview's quarterback is perhaps the biggest dual threat they've faced all season long. And obviously, we've harped on it in this episode. We've harped on it all season long. Their mobile quarterbacks are what have beaten the Georgetown Eagles defensively. Eastview's quarterback, Cormac Guerrero. He's their head guy. He's throwing at 61% completion percentage, 1,222 yards, 9 touchdowns, 1 interception. But he actually leads their team in rush yards as well. 45 carries, 542, and 7 scores on the ground. He also had a big-time breakaway touchdown run against Cedar Park last week. He is very fast. He's like lightning in a bottle with the ball in his hands. He's going to be Georgetown's biggest test, I think, in regards to a mobile quarterback, a guy who can easily rip off a 20, 25-yard carry at any given moment if they're not ready and they're not prepared and not playing with discipline. And that has been the biggest issue with Georgetown's defense. The biggest question mark that's remained for me is how they will continue to battle against these mobile quarterbacks, because the mobile quarterbacks, they're going to get the plays. They're going to inevitably have their talent win out a play or two, and they're going to get the 20-yard run. They're going to get the 15-yard run. But how can you prevent that from being a consistent theme? That because if you're able to prevent that from being there every single play, you take that element out of Eastview's offense, and you do not allow them to rely on the QB run as an effective and efficient method of pushing the ball down the field on drives. If you are able to limit that, that's going to be the key to winning this football game to me, is if Georgetown's defense can rally together and focus and limit this quarterback scramble ability, because they've thrown the ball well. Their leading receivers, Alan Blaylock, 33 receptions, 427 yards, and 5 touchdowns. But that really hasn't been their focal points throwing the ball. It's really been that run game. It's really been that quarterback making the plays when he needs to. That's been the way they've won. Their defense has been a little up and down. It's somewhat resemblant to Rouse. I think this defense is a lot better than Rouse's, and this offense might be a little bit better as well. But in the past 2 weeks, the defense has allowed 36 and 38 points. But the 2 weeks before that, they only allowed 10 and 17, including 10 to Belton, which was the team that Georgetown could not stop to save their lives. So there is something to monitor going into this game. What defense are we going to get from Eastview? Are we going to get the teams who played like Belton and Cedar Park these past 2 games? Or are we going to get the Glen and Belton versions where they allowed only 10 and 17? There's still a lot of variance with this Eastview team. They haven't quite settled into who they want to be yet. And this is an upstart group. Again, this is a team that wasn't really expected to be at this stage in the season. So perhaps maybe a little bit of the expectations, the excitement, the emotion of having this many wins, being undefeated in district might be causing a little bit of fluctuation in the performance week to week. And that is to be expected with a team that, not necessarily hasn't been there before, but just is new to this type of pedigree, just is new to being undefeated in district. It's a team that hasn't really quite been here before. And sometimes you get those teams, the guys that they're upstarts, they're ready to go out to prove themselves that they belong here. And sometimes you get that energy and they come out really, really strong. But sometimes you get that energy and sometimes the energy kind of overrides the effectiveness, and maybe they'll come out a little bit flat. So it's been a little bit volatile for the team offensively. Now, defensively, they've been good. They've been up and down. Offensively, been good, been up and down. They've won 5 straight games. They only lost was to Stony Point to start the season off. They've rattled off 5 straight, including, like I mentioned, the big win at Cedar Park last week, the first time they'd ever beaten Cedar Park. So they're going to come into this football game riding that high, riding the emotion, coming in, looking to prove that they are legit and take down their biggest rival in the process. And if they do that, Eastview may very well be on their way to going undefeated the rest of the way, because I think Georgetown is right now the team to beat in this district, and then Eastview is right there, right behind them. And if they get this one other signature win against Georgetown, they, I think, might take this all the way, go undefeated, and take this district title. But the same goes for Georgetown. If they can get this final win against Eastview, that would really cement their position at number 1. And then they can start looking forward to that district title potentially down the line if they can knock off the Eastview Patriots. Still a long way to go, obviously, so they're not going to talk district champion if they beat Eastview. But this is the biggest test they've got left on their schedule outside of potentially Cedar Park final week of the year. But naturally, Cedar Park now at that 2 spot after Eastview knocked them off last week. So this is a game that has monumental implications going forward for both teams, because I think the winner of this one is on the fast track to securing that district title that is highly, highly coveted for that playoff seeding. To get that 1 seed and going into the playoffs is a big deal, and both these teams are going to want this very, very badly. It's going to be great. It's going to be a big-time game. Stadium should be packed. Big rivalry. Again, biggest implications that I remember this rivalry having in a long, long time. So if you can show up, please be there. It should be a good one. So that'll do it for me. We get through all the information every single week. I try to bring it to you as quickly as I can. And so I'm going to try to keep these videos around the 40-minute mark. We don't want them super, super long to where it's like an eye roll to watch, but want them to still be informational enough to where, like, to feel like they deserve to exist. And so a lot of stuff to get into. Got through all of it. A big-time win last week against Rouse, a gut check really for that football team. Really find out what they're made of. Coming out with that big EFND win, and now looking ahead, the big week it's Eastview. Technically, Georgetown's the road team here, but it's still going to be played at Brockleback Field. If you can make it there, please show up. If you can't, we'll have the call. SHN YouTube channel, First Responder Broadcasting. We're going to bring it to you live. We've also got the Coaches Show Wednesday nights, and this will go up at some point this week. So thank you for watching to this point if you have, and I will see you Friday night, and then I will see you next week for that breakdown. And thank you again for just watching. It means the world to me if you've come this far. And so, like always, doesn't cost a dime to be kind, as the great Wally Harmon would say, and I'll see you Friday night. Thank you.